With YouTube attacking alternative media, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon for just $1 per month. Link below. So, Comicsgate is something that I have been criticized for dismissing, and I acknowledge that I did. I'll be fair. When Comicsgate was first kind of presented to me, I didn't really see much going on there from what I would maybe attribute it to, but it's been ongoing for months. There's been so much crap happening. I haven't really kept up with it, and for that I do apologize. But it does appear that a lot of people like Diversity in Comics, a good YouTuber you should check out, and a lot of other channels have been really trying to nail this stuff, and they're doing a good job. And as a result of that, we're seeing a little bit of censorship, kind of, in the form of DC Comics and comic book subreddits bans all Comicsgate discussion, simply because they don't like it. They can't handle the heat anymore. And it's just unfortunate. It's super unfortunate that these kind of discussions get banned. And when Gamergate was going on, we got banned off of 4chan. That's hardcore. Getting banned off of 4chan? How does one even get remotely removed from 4chan? You can go on there and find photos of people having sex with dead corpses. Fine. You talk about Gamergate and it's all get the fuck out, you know? Anyway, it says here, if you visit social media site Reddit and check out some of the comic book subreddits, such as one for DC Comics and the official comic book subreddit, and combined they have nearly 750,000 subscribers, you won't be able to discuss Comicsgate on those boards. Both subreddit communities have banned all discussion of Comicsgate, likening it to Gamergate, which was also widely banned and censored across almost all major gaming communities during its peak. The news was discussed by YouTuber Diversity in Comics, who did a video about the censorship. And again, Diversity in Comics is a good guy. You should check out Zach's work. It says here that over on the DC Comics subreddit, there's a public service announcement from the moderator. This ought to be good. It says, in recent times, I'm not going to do it like that. Anyway, in recent times, there's been rumblings coming from the Twitter sphere and other parts of the internet towards that world of the funny books. This includes threats and advocacy of violence towards creators and other professionals in the field. In recent weeks in particular, there has been a campaign of targeted harassment in comics, especially against women, people of color, LGBT writers, artists, colorists, editors, and journalists. This is for what happens to be the crime of wanting to increase diversity and representation. This is being spread through Comicsgate. You gotta love that. Just that opening, that opening salvo of a remark there, right? That's so stupid. You know, it's oh no, it's all harassment. Yeah, I'd like to kind of I like to say numbers ultimately don't lie. And if you go and you look at all the pro SJW comics books from Marvel's 2016 and 2017, they're all gone now. Why? Because nobody bought them. Nobody wanted your political narrative, your political ideology pulled from your ass and shoved down their throat. Nobody wanted that. Hence why at this point Comicsgate begins. Now we're talking censorship. This is where it starts blowing up. This is where it can hit peak levels of crazy and send comic book fans into a rage over this stuff. This says, over here at our DC Comics, we see this for exactly what it is. We find it to be the worst kind of disingenuous gatekeeping. Oh, really? Really? You're going to sit there and tell me that that this Comicsgate discussion is disingenuous gatekeeping, right? But Make Mine Milkshake wasn't? The crap done to Ethan Von Shriver isn't? Come on, dude. What is wrong with you, you idiot? Targeted at the creators, the professionals, and finally fellow readers. We stand against those who have taken a page from the harassment books of other #gates and say definitively, there is no room for it in our sub, and we are making the stand here. We will exercise discretion and remove as seen fit any Comicsgate material. We are not and have never been afraid to ban for Rule 1 violations. So by all means, try us. Yes. I'd like to take you guys back to August 18th, I believe, 2014. The day that not so much Gamergate began, but what kind of led to Gamergate was happening. A few key items. My video was taken down through a false DMCA. And our gaming, the largest gaming subreddit on Reddit, was talking about the Zoe Quinn issue. And you had comments being deleted by not just the tens or hundreds or thousands, literally by the tens of thousands. You were able to see these comments being deleted in real time. And the reason why this was happening was because Zoe Quinn and her friend Patrick Klepek, who at the time worked for Giant Bomb, now writes for Waypoint with Rolling Stone. So we're talking with one of the moderators of our gaming on Twitter openly, by the way. This is all archived. And they were getting him to essentially delete all these things. Or, well, maybe not getting him, but that was the result. That's what got Total Biscuit involved, which then opened it up to a much larger audience. That is one of the things that helped bring in Adam Baldwin through Internet Aristocrats videos. It wasn't me who kicked off Gamergate. It was a series of events that led to it. And one of them was censorship. A big one was censorship. I would argue the biggest push was the censorship, because it's very, very, very hard to hide from it. We live in the digital age where everything is archived. And as a result of that, you just straight screwed yourself, our DC Comics. Whoever mod wrote this is a moron of epic proportions. You literally do not know the hell you are going to unleash upon your subreddit when you sit there and say, so by all means, try us. Idiot. This is the internet. You don't sit there and say, go ahead and try me, fellas, and expect not to get your ass caved in. Seriously. Anyway, it goes on to say, this post was not coordinated with our comic books. Both subs came to an independent decision that we would not see the same doxing, 1x, not 2, you dumbass, threats and toxic environment overtake comics discussion in the way it did other entertainment media in the past. Rather than turn a blind eye, we prefer to take a stance. It is not out of fear, but clarity we spoke on this issue. Well, it's looking for clarity. You're having a hard time wiping away the fog. Have you thought about putting down your pot for a minute, getting a little bit clear-headed, and then go, oh no, what have we done? What have we done? We've made the biggest mistake ever. Because it's true, you have. This is so dumb. You're telling people to go ahead and try you. It's the internet, man. Like, don't tell the internet not to do something, right? Look, even though 4chan will say things like, not my personal army or not your personal army, they also look for things to become a personal army over. They look for things to get mad about. And this is one of the things that's going to get people mad. Just imagine, and I'm not telling anyone to do this by any stretch of the imagination, but just imagine if all of a sudden our DC Comics was rated by trap threads or gore threads, or Rule 34 threads about certain, it's going to this can happen. You anger the internet long enough and it's going to end up hurting you. Now, as mentioned in the PSA, there's also a cross post over on our comic books by the moderators who have posted a similar message that says, there's been a growing movement on the internet in the last few years about targeting certain creators. These creators have been targeted, include but aren't limited to women, members of the LGBT community, religious minorities, and people of color. I would say that, well, they're not like all targeted, everyone's targeted, but these are the ones we're going to focus on because it's like clearly going to have the largest level of emotional impact on our readers, because we're not trying to play this emotional game at all. We're simply not trying to play on people's emotional heartstrings in regards to this issue to support censorship. We're not that bad. No, you are that bad. You're kind of that bad. These groups on the internet threaten creators with harassment and violence because these creators don't support their views. If you are one of these individuals that have threatened or harassed people, you are not welcome in the subreddit. Does that go for comic book creators and artists and everyone else who works on the team that's gone on Twitter and outright attacked the audience? Again, that was one of the things that started Gamergate, people. When you had game developers, well, not so much game developers, but you had the journalists. Hence why Gamergate, for me, was more about ethics in video game journalism, because what you had were these groups that were trying to, use their platform to shout down opinions they did not like because it wasn't within their San Francisco bubble. This is what starts these kind of conflicts. You think you're doing the right thing. You're literally doing the opposite. I'm not saying to allow harassment or allow violence or discussion or things like that to go on, or violent discussion to happen. What I mean is, you are seriously just going to hurt yourself because this is going to anger some people. All right. So then it says outlets like Inverse are reporting that the censorship of Comicsgate was in response to a list circulating on social media of writers and artists that comic book readers claim are pushing regressive politics in the industry, and in turn are ruining the industry. And the thing is, this list isn't like a hit list or anything else like this. These are people that are like literally, you know, who was the girl that wrote Angela Queen of Hell and had the whole unsolicited opinions on Israel meme happen? Because, you know, Thor's grandfather is going to be sitting on the toilet going like, I really wonder what's going on in Jerusalem right now. Like, did Trump move over the embassy? Is that a done deal? I mean, like, clearly the eastern side is not going to be happy, and there's going to probably be some violence. But, hey, like, whatever. What the Jews are going to Jew, what the Jews are going to Jew. Like, no, he's not thinking that, because the Norse God doesn't care what goes on in the Gaza Strip. They don't. Why? Does he want some, like, pita chips and hummus? Like, is that what's going on here? Is he really into the Wonder Woman movie? I have no idea. But no, they're not going to think about that. It says here that the list was to help consumers avoid comic books that these people work on, to try to avoid supporting what they feel is the degradation of the comic books industry. While the PSAs from both subreddits boards make it seem like as if Comicsgate was some kind of harassment campaign, the actual subscribers aren't swallowing the blue pill at all. In fact, many of them are quite aware that Comicsgate, much like Gamergate, is not about harassment. A female comic book reader reproached the moderator of DC Comics subreddit after he tried to state that Comicsgate was about targeting women, people of color, and those in the LGBT community. And this is what she says. Jesus, no, it's not. Female comic book fan here. I want to quickly pause. And I'm pretty sure she feels the same way, hates having to use that as a way to get like a conch shell in the argument, because that's what it boils down to. It's like Lord of the Flies. This is pretty much, it's all Lord of the Flies. Okay. But whoever has like the conch shell generally is like trying to play up the most like, oppressed thing about them. And it's all the identity politics game. But she's like trying to sit there and go like, no, give me the conch shell. I have the conch shell. I'm also a female. That's how I got this. Saying here, that's not what it is at all. This is an attack on comics creators with conservative views, or who happen not to think that all people who disagree with them are not Nazis. Did you see Ethan Van Sciver being attacked for his beliefs and people leading campaigns for firing him, despite having never said a bad thing about women in comics? And this is a reality. People were making things up about him. But of course it's not going to matter, because the die's already been cast and the narrative's already been solidified. This is why identity politics needs to stay out of these kind of places. It's not that you can't have an opinion. I just want to make that clear. You can have whatever opinion you want. I'm totally fine with that. All right. If you are a liberal writer who wants to write stories in comic books, you should have the same right as a conservative writer who wants to tell stories in comic books. The best way to approach it is to keep your opinions at the door. Now, that's not always going to happen. Let's be realistic, right? We're always going to interject our own thoughts and our own opinions. They're going to come through the narrative in terms of characters' actions or dialogues or whatever. And that ultimately is fine, provided we are aware of that and try to make it as objective and neutral as humanly possible. We don't get that in the case of the liberals, the progressives that come on in and they're like, everything has to be gay. Like, no, it does. Does it really? It totally does. Everything is gay. That plant, homosexual, loves Ellen, right? Like, what does that do with Price of Tea in China? Like, none of it tells a good story. Oh, I'm not here to tell a good story. I just want to make that plant and that teapot have lots of sex, because that sounds like fun gay time. I don't know, making that up, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. Anyway, Ethan Van Sciver, a comic book artist who has been harassed by SJW comic book community across social media and even threatened with violence. With help from journalists from the Comic Book Resources and Polygon, they've also attempted to launch campaigns to get him fired from DC Comics for being a conservative. Yeah, this is Comicsgate. Holy crap. No, I was wrong. So people who out there who were saying I was wrong, you were right. I just want to make that abundantly clear and say publicly here and now that I do apologize. The intersectional inquisition, by the way, that's a good name. Nobody expects the intersectional inquisition. No. Also did the same to artist John Malin, attempting to get him fired from Marvel for saying that current-day SJW mobs behave like Nazis during World War II. Perhaps that's going a little bit too far. Okay, I don't see like, conservative comic book writers like taking their gold and shoving it up their ass as they get past the SJW Nazis coming to take them to camps. All right, like that's not happening. So there's a little bit on the hyperbole side there. Now, this kind of censorship in Comicsgate, which was to bring awareness to the comic books industry at large and the casual comic book reader, how the comic book industry has become enveloped in regressive politics. That is true. This is similar to Gamergate, which exposed massive amounts of corruption within the game industry, which led to the FTC updating and reinforcing their guidelines after disclosure. After Gamergate put together a campaign to improve the disclosure policies within gaming and the media industry. Gamergate also sought to enforce ethics policies by teaming up with Society of Professional Journalists for the Airplay event back in 2015 to discuss ethics in media journalism. And to many, that kind of signifies the end of Gamergate. Right? You seek out the Society of Professional Journalists, and you get them to go, Gamergate was right all along. These things need to be disclosed and ethics need to be maintained. And as a result of that, these writers back in San Francisco are just like, it burns! Ethics! They burn! That's what they do. Because it's got to be the smog. Or the fact that they don't get enough vitamin D. It's always kind of foggy there. They should go get supplements from Costco. They might feel better. Perhaps a suppository or two. Can make them feel pretty good. Despite encouraging multiple online outlets updating their ethics policies, the media still claimed Gamergate was about harassing women and minorities out of the industry and purposefully ignoring movements like Not Your Shield, which is very true. The narrative for Comicsgate is the same, with the media and many politically regressive communities claiming that the movement is about harassment. Regardless of what the media says, the consumers aren't wrong about the politics affecting sales. The sales have been so bad for Marvel's comic book division that they had to cancel some of their more politically charged books heading into 2018. They also replaced their former editor-in-chief, who heavily pushed for the feminist-themed comic books over the past 6 years, all in hopes of righting the ship, which is true. We've seen these Mockingjay asking about my feminist agenda books crash and burn. And it's not that these thoughts don't have places in stories. Because I do think that they do. We can learn from different ideologies through the stories. But it's just like Ghostbusters 2016, and going back to an analogy that I made earlier. They took nostalgia, pulled it from their ass, and crammed it down your throat. That never works. You can never cram things down a reader's or viewer's throat and expect a positive response. Nobody wants to gag on that shit. And that's what happens here, is they're not given a choice. And when they exercise their right to complain and to criticize, they are then branded the worst of the worst, simply because they have an alternative opinion. That is why these things are important to talk about. That is why these things are important to discuss. Because these people, let's face it, let's be bluntly realistic here. They're bad. They are bad people who think that they're good doing right things. They're not. Censorship, blocking of conversation, blindly labeling those with a difference of opinion Nazis is not how you seek progress. It's how you engage in a cultural civil war that ultimately has no real winner. But at the end of the day, you're still going to lose. Because the people out there with common sense outweigh you tenfold. And eventually, they're going to see that you are the fraud that you are and kick your ass to the curb. Now, it finishes up here by saying, if the media continues its attack on the comic book industry in the way that the gaming industry attacked its own consumers, it could easily disrupt Marvel's plans to lure old fans back into the fold. At that point, one would have to question what Marvel and DC's plans would be if the media positioned the industry against its own customers. Well, considering the fact that, let's just be realistic here, when it comes to Marvel, most of the stuff that does well for them is all coming out of the movies. So they're trying new things here. But I've seen someone post on Twitter, there's no Trump supporters who work for Marvel. And I was like, y'all should go look up Ike Perlmutter. Ike Perlmutter is the CEO of Marvel. I think like proper, pretty much, like Marvel Comics, Marvel Television, like just kind of Marvel, right? He may answer to like Bob Iger over at Disney, but he's the one who runs that shit. Kevin Feige runs Marvel Studios, which is now kind of like an offshoot of that. Kevin Feige doesn't answer to Perlmutter anymore. Perlmutter came under fire in the 2016 presidential election because he is friends with Donald Trump and gave Donald Trump's charity for Army vets like $1 million. People lost their minds at that. This is the dude who basically oversees the stuff with the comic books department. And so, yes, All of you who work for Marvel Comics, all of you, every single one of you who cry and complain that people with conservative opinions are like Nazis, guess what? You work for a guy, ultimately work for a guy who supports Trump. Don't you think that your best course of action would be to quit your job and move on, so then you're not feeding the beast and therefore profiting, giving profits to a man who supports the person you hate the most? Just saying.